So, Guru Nation, I'm bringing you Brittany Sloan. Yesterday, her and I had like off. Obviously, it wasn't recorded, or you would have seen it. Um, we had a good conversation about her organization, her passion for diversity. Black Research Matters is her group. She's going to tell you more about it. At the end of this interview, we're going to have 10 more minutes exclusive content just for Latinos in Clinical Research channel, where we're going to talk more about similarities between what LICR is trying to do and what Black Research Matters is trying to do. So make sure you go there. All ethnicities welcome, all backgrounds, doesn't matter. It's just more content. But for Guru Nation, it's always nice to showcase people doing like ambitious things in this industry. Brittany, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And you guys probably know Ashley Margot, but if not, she's the co-host today. And we're going to be asking Brittany a lot of questions about her career, um, and really like share her story of why she decided to start an organization like Black Research Matters. Because it's not like you just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to start an organization," like out of thin air. So
Right.
let's get into your career a little bit first, Brittany. Like, how did you get into clinical research?
So it was a stumble for me. And it was a good stumble. Into around the time of the recession. So 20 I'll say 2007.
Mm.
I couldn't go back to college. I had a debt against my account. My parents couldn't pay for it. My dad lost his job, and I had to get a big girl job. I couldn't do work study anymore. And I had a biology background, and I had one more semester left to graduate, but obviously I didn't have this degree that's always required for these positions. So I was able to finagle a clinical research position part time at UNC. And I ended up, I think how a number of people stumble into the field, I ended up being really good at it, understanding the basis of how research ran. I was excited to read the protocols, follow them. I'm like typical research person. I'm a type A personality, OCD a little bit. And this was just right up my alley. I was a biology major, but not really quite sure what I wanted to do with that. Like, did I want to do bench lab work? Did I want to go and be a doctor, which I was pretty sure I didn't want to do that? Did I want to do medicine? I was pretty sure. Did I want to go into a softer science? But stumbling upon this was probably the greatest thing that happened for me, because I found this niche of a place that was just ideal and perfect. And then it branched off from there. And so then I went to, of course, the rival Duke, and worked over there for a while and did
Wait, hold
data
on, hold on, hold
management.
on, hold on, hold on. Wait. Okay, how did you stumble into it? Because a lot of people are watching right now, and they're not gonna stumble, right? Because now it's intentional. Like we put it out there in the universe on the internet. This is the beautiful thing about this. If you're watching this and you don't have research experience, you're not gonna stumble into it anymore because now you have awareness. So how could they purposely stumble into it and you accidentally,
Yeah.
right?
And that's a good point, because those of us who are generally, I feel like, brown, add female, add anything onto that, and my age, 37, in the early 2000s, you were stumbling into it. Nobody was, there wasn't much of a network, and there wasn't much of a way for those who looked like me to be able to promote me into a space, into the space, onto the table, in the arena. So thank you for making me take a step back, because
Yeah, we gotta
this
slow it down
generation
because
and
you're
this
already.
world is different. Like, that's not going to be the struggle necessarily that they're going to have, the one that maybe some of us had who are older. So when I say I stumbled, I literally found this position on Craigslist.
Wow. So what were you
And
doing?
I
Like
just,
you were just on Craigslist one day, like just searching jobs,
yeah.
gigs,
Yeah.
and
Before that, I worked at LabCorp. I had always had little, research related positions, like adjacent, right? Like chem lab jobs, or I worked for North Carolina DOT when I was in college. But I needed a position that actually paid real money, not an internship, not a co op, not something that was associated with the college, because I wasn't at that time associated with my school because of this debt that I had. So yeah, I mean, I fought tooth and nail, blood, sweat, and tears, waited a long time, tried to file unemployment, and just kept fighting until I found the position. And in some regard, I feel like there's still that. Maybe not now, but I still, like, within the last 5 years, I still have felt that. In the last 7 years, I've still felt where, like, if you, when I moved from North Carolina to San Diego, the part where I didn't know anybody, I had no network. I really was out there cold calling, cold emailing, trying to find a position. And so that's what I mean when I talk about the stumble into it. That I think for me, even though I got into the field, if you go into a totally different area, sometimes I still feel the struggle of maybe like breaking into the industry in that regional area.
I'm glad we broke it down because, I mean, in many respects, it's a little bit easier maybe to get in because of the, YouTube and organizations like yours, organizations like ours, YouTube channels, different content creators. I mean, it's 2022 is a different world than 2007, but in many
Absolutely.
respects, and I'm guessing this is one of the reasons you started Black Research Matters. It's definitely one of the reasons we started Latinos in Clinical Research.
Mhm.
Much still hasn't changed, right? We were talking a little bit about this
Right.
yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But to say for Black Research Matters, that came later, around, the idea was around 2016, and it was my frustration with my company's leadership and the third parties that we were working with. So thank you for giving me that credit. But it wasn't until maybe like 5 or so years ago the thought popped into my head. Now, I'm not I'm an evolving extrovert. I used to love to be on the scene, and now I like to be in the back. And so, as I was thinking of this concept, this space, well, first, let me take a step back. So, let's talk about Black Research Matters real quick. Black Research Matters is a safe space free of criticism and judgment for Black people specifically to learn more about research with the purposes of strengthening the community by the individual becoming a better informed decision maker in the future. So that's a mouthful, but the purpose of all of that, creating this safe space, was so intentional a response from what I was noticing within the field of 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 recruitment and just general awareness of what a demographic or a cultural group outside of general white American would look like, and how do you encourage these populations to have discussions about around research, thus encouraging participation. There wasn't that. There was just recruitment material that had a Black person on it, or recruitment material that had an Asian person on it, and it was just giving the same information, not even understanding that there's we're talking about equity here. Like, there's a lack of connection and resources for people of color generally to even understand what an MRI is and why we're doing one for testing, and for $20 I'm supposed to take my day off to go up there. Like, the purpose wasn't necessarily driven home to our demographics, and nobody cared. Honestly, nobody cared.
That's
Nobody
the
cared.
worst part. That's the worst part. Nobody cared. Let's come back to that. But okay, sorry I interrupted you before about Duke. So let's continue with Duke.
So I go on to Duke, yes, and I do data management there for prostate cancer. When I was at UNC prior to Duke, it was breast cancer. And then went on to Duke and did data management and prostate, and then moved on to another Duke position and did head, neck, and throat cancers, lung cancers
Wow.
as well. Was a research coordinator in that position. And then from there moved to another Duke position, but I did animal research, business management. I ran the office. If anybody's familiar with the Eye of Cook, it's the animal research world.
You
And
are a
then
generalist.
Yeah.
You're a
I
generalist.
am.
So why
This
you're
is
also very
awesome.
organized. I can see it. Like, you're getting all these, you've seen all the loopholes and you just kind of like come in and figure them out. Yeah, I totally vibe
Point
with
in
you.
my career, absolutely, I can say that. But at the time, I was like, where are we going? Like, why? What are we doing? Like, to myself, Brittany, what are we doing here? Like, all these are all connected, yes. But like, how is this really going to benefit me? And I'm happy to be here in this position. But so then from that Duke position in the animal research role, I moved out to San Diego and took a position with UCSD, University of California, San Diego. And then that transitioned over to a role, my colleagues and I, to USC. We were still in San Diego, but our academic affiliation was USC. And in that role, I was a regulatory affairs specialist. So then I moved over into regulatory, a position I hadn't been in yet. Did that for 7 years, like I said. And then in January, I got bit by whatever that millennial great resignation bug was, and I quit my job and I moved back to North Carolina, and now I live in Charlotte, and I am in the process of going back to work and working on Black Research Matters in the meantime.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
So your background, the fact that you've done so many things is gonna like you've already been a mentor, I'm guessing, to so many, and we're gonna get into Black Research Matters too, like some of the specifics. But I think that's such a powerful asset that you have. You've done coordinating, you've done data management, you've done regulatory affairs, you've done animal studies, you've done business, you've done basically almost
Every
everything there is
yeah.
in this industry. So if somebody approaches you like from a different angle, you have the right context
Hmm.
to give them
Right,
appropriate advice, which I think is like
right,
severely lacking in this industry, is like an industry of special hyper specialization. And
yeah,
to find a generalist, I tell people all the time on my channel, like, try to become a generalist. Nobody wants to hire a generalist, but everybody wants somebody who knows how to do something at a certain period of time. So
right. The
you're always going to be
crossover,
in demand.
absolutely.
Especially, I think
Yeah,
to add to what Dan said is that nowadays you have this selling point where everybody's a specialist, everybody knows, and everybody this, everybody that. But really, it's about finding those individuals, like you say, on the background. And I can definitely feel you on that because I was always in organizations growing up and very extroverted, and I've told Dan this multiple times, like in the background, that since all this has happened, I find myself much more fun, having fun, being in the backgrounds, creating, finding the purpose, and
mm-hmm.
formulating, right? And so I think right now one of the biggest issues is that there's so many, I'm not gonna say false advertisers out there, but it's just they don't have the background that people really need, you know?
Yeah,
It's important that somebody comes in with actual, face to facts of what they can provide, right? And so when Dan, spoke to me about you and I looked you up on LinkedIn, I was just like, oh my God, you have so much to offer. And then we're hearing your story, really, as Dan was saying, generalization about the work and overall scope. That's major because you can see and be the living testament to how somebody can transition easily, how can they can maneuver based off of their skill set, and really I
right.
think ultimately that's what people need. They need to have confidence in whoever's helping them, but it's also to showcase that it is possible, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
And Google is a great tool. I know people refer and highlight and shout out the internet all the time, but as people are trying to build their resume out, there are so many tools, like Dan said, maybe in the early 2000s. I mean, piggybacking off of what Dan said, I'm saying maybe in the early 2000s, there wasn't much of that. But you can literally put in like clinical research, CV template, something along those lines to get an idea of what you need to do, or also being spoon fed, and I'm saying that because I've been spoon fed over the summer as I update my CV. And it's a lot more. The information is a lot more accessible. I wouldn't say easy, but it's a lot more accessible to get to, in hopes that it'll turn it into a career for somebody. Pro tip.
People are more spoiled now because they have like everything handed to them. It's almost like, in a way, it could be more confusing also. One of the things that turns people off are job postings. Like, I know because I'm on TikTok, like answering comments. People think that only the jobs they see being posted are what's being hired. And I always tell them, like, research sites, small ones like mine, we don't post. Doesn't mean we're not hiring. somebody walked in and reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I see the UMA clinical trials. Like, how can I help?" People need to do more networking and not just rely on, oh, well, on this job posting, it said 2 years of experience and I only have 1 year and a half. So I'm not even going to apply. I get that
Yeah.
attitude so often. And I wanted to expand on what you said earlier about it seems like people don't care, especially when it comes to minorities getting careers in this industry. I don't know how that is still the case. Literally every week there's a conference or a seminar or a Zoom. We had one earlier with Ashley, with a major CRO on this topic. So there's at least there's a perception of effort. But when you talk to people in the know, like you're saying no, people don't care. So
Well,
how is this possible?
I actually meant people in the field of clinical research don't care about expanding recruitment and retention outside of like the effort of just changing the face on the recruitment materials. But and also, Dan, you are correct in that uh, one of the reasons why this is happening is that we have a lack of representation in the field in general. And if people of color saw people who look like them of all shades and spoke the languages and talked with the funk and all the stuff, that they would be more comfortable to participate because somebody was there like them. The same thing with Obama, the Obama effect of him being president. So to your point, even more so, that is a problem. And to say it as plainly as possible without being PC, yes, they know that it's a problem. I'm saying they, all the powers that be, we'll put them all in one four-letter word. They know it's a problem. They've created this DEI initiative, and nobody's holding anybody accountable of what that actually looks like. Okay, they came out with these DEI initiatives. If you ask me personally, around the time of George Floyd and his passing, and that was well and good. And I hope a lot of us were paying attention to what they said their talking points were going to be. You know what I mean? Because 2 years post, this is when you look at them and you say to them, you said that you were going to elevate the platform on X, Y, and Z. How are you doing that? How are you measuring, and where are you at now? Where are you at now? You know what I mean? And like, so I think the thing is that like, not that we wanted to, there was just a lot going on at the time, okay, because COVID. We heard that they had these DEI missions, and now 2 years later, I think it's fair for us to begin to ask, like, what does that look like? What data results, what data points have you created? You know, because I think what we're going to see, as we've been seeing it play out, is that it's a bunch of lip service,
Yeah, it's a bunch of rhetoric. I
unfortunately.
mean, my
Yeah, it
question
is.
was really like more rhetorical in the sense that like how is it possible on the one hand there's this rhetoric, like you said, since basically 2020 that we want change in all these initiatives, and on the other hand, we're not seeing similar results despite more running on the same hamster wheel,
Yeah. Well, my friend, I mean, this is a conversation that really comes down to the racism that is in research. And if we're not going to have that honest conversation, then it's just going to be tense like this forever.
Let's do
I mean,
it.
that's the
Let's do it.
realness. That's the realness of it, you know? Like the reason they're uncomfortable is because, and I'm saying I'm biracial. My mom is white and my dad is black. So I've had these tense conversations often. And the reason they're uncomfortable is because a couple of things. I think a lot of people, I'm talking about in this field, there's going to be like a lot of older white people, generally older white men. I think generally they feel like maybe guilt or shame associated with it, but also a lot of anger and rage and displacement of that, and not really quite sure where to put it. And like giving it's a concession in a way for some reason to like give up this power. It's a power dynamic, now that I've said it out loud. And so we say that there's a problem, and I'm saying this from experience. Brad was on this
Love that guy.
platform with me over.
That's
Yes,
how I
shout
found
out to
out
Brad
about you.
Hightower.
That's how I found out
Yeah,
about you
thank
from his
you.
podcast.
I mean, yeah, I'm glad you said that. He's a great guy. Shout out to Not the File podcast. But over the summer we were on this Clubhouse meeting that was to discuss how to break down. It was a coalition that was created with the intention of addressing DEI in research. I'm not really quite sure with clinical trialists, or was it on the participant side? Let's say just both. I was invited to speak on behalf of Black Research Matters, and I ended up having to go first. I had never been in this space before, and the question that day was about something to the regards of, let's talk about justice. How do we identify that in research? How do we quantify it? How do we deal with it? And how do we fix it, get it going, or whatever? And basically my positioning was, if we're not going to talk about the racism in research, and we're not going to talk about those issues, then we can't talk about justice. We can't talk about justice until we talk about injustice. Like, where in the hell did that even come from for us to even have to discuss a dialogue about justice? Obviously something happened, right? So like, we should start where the problem was. And they did not like that. They did not like that. The whole group and the whole panel did not like what I had to say. I was quoted as boiling the ocean, making it hot for no reason,
Mhm.
bringing in issues that aren't related. And he clarified and asked that he was asking for more of like a technical perspective, like how in clinical research. And I'm like, but that's still the answer, Like, I've been in the field for a minute. I'm a Black woman. I'm Black. I'm a woman. I'm in research. Like, I have the perspective to say that we have to talk about the real conversation is this really touchy, uncomfortable thing that we don't want to discuss in this country.
Mhm. That's that's insane, honestly. I mean, part of the reason why I really love like our platform, right, is because of the fact that, you uh, can't, and that's what so I'm in research, but I've also been in the clinical field. It's almost completely the same. And it's kind of a thing where it's just, we can talk about it, but surface talk. Let's, pillow talk it, or however you want to put
Right.
it. And it's annoying because, again, the conversations won't be had. So here I love that we can bring up the very uncomfortable topics. Like I've been in uncomfortable topics. I'm full Latina, but I look Caucasian. So some would say I would have, the benefit of looking full Caucasian, right? So I've had those
Right.
uncomfortable conversations and things like that. And it's good to have them because you have a different perspective on like where people are coming from and how you play into all of that. And so one thing that I personally feel, where I come from, a long line of very strong single women in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always taught, you pretty much you make the path for yourself. And so growing up, I've always kind of been in those types of roles, like state organizations and things like that. So when Dan came to us about LICR, it was very much like, well, we created the organization, but when we started reaching out to these organizations, we started seeing that there really wasn't much communication. It was dragged on communication. It was like, let's have introductions so we can save face. But
Mm-hmm.
months later, where are we at? There's nothing happening. And that's how we came up with the university and clinical research, because we said, okay, well, if there's an issue of hiring this and that, well, let's create the solution. And then that solution brought upon other solutions. So now we have this scenario where we almost have a full 360 solution to so many things. And when we bring it up to them, it's like, all right, here, you don't want to have the conversations. All right, cool, that's fine. But now here's your solution. You always say, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to come across? Well, now there's an actual solution. And now it's partially controlled by a very diverse background of people, right? We can actually have a say on the future movement forward, as opposed to, okay, if they don't want to have the dialogue, I mean, whatever. It's just, let's move forward. And even then, it's still so hard. There's so much red tape, and it's ridiculous. I That's something that I personally get upset about and I struggle about. This is a conversation can keep going on, and when we have these conversations with the organization separately, I get very heated in the topics
Yeah.
because it's it's dumb. It's really dumb, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that openly in an actual clubhouse recording. That's insane.
Yeah,
That's okay. I
Clubhouse is
took it
meant to
like a
be.
G. I took it like a G.
You're
You
like,
can
I'm
ask
good. I'm good.
Brad. I took it fine. I took it just I was hot, but
So was that
yeah,
Clubhouse
and
before or after you started Black Research Matter?
There's something I did want to ask, Brittany. When exactly did you start it? Because I know you said it was an
December of
idea.
2019. Yeah, I mean, it took a while to come. No, it didn't take
Fruition.
a while for me to come to me. It took a while for me to act upon it, because I kept saying to myself, there's somebody out here who has an organization like this. Like I'm stupid to think that I'm the only person in the US in this land of like polar racist opposites always occurring no matter where you are in USA. Like somebody came up with an organization where Black people can talk about research and learn some stuff with the purposes. And what's really important to me about Black Research Matters is that I'm not here telling people to go vote or to go do X, Y, and Z or to participate in research. My job is just to give you the information for us to talk about it. And I trust that you are smart enough to make your own decisions so that and when you are approached to participate in research, whether just on the street, it's a survey, or you were at the ER, or you went to a doctor's appointment and some cute little thing is coming up like, do you want to participate in this little research and got blood work and can give you a coupon? You know what you're getting yourself into. You know the questions to ask, and the consent form doesn't look crazy
Yeah.
unusual to you, you know, and you're okay with these words and the terms, or you feel confident to and comfortable to ask questions. I think a lot of times with not just with Black people, but with minorities, because we don't have access to resources and because we're always on the go. I think of it as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If y'all have ever seen that, the bottom is like your most essential needs, and they go up from there. And the top is like something like self-actualization. Most people who are minorities don't live much past this bottom level where we have to get our essential needs. So we don't have much of the opportunity to have these conversations and to sit here and dialogue about this stuff. So then that goes into our lack of participation, whether historically we find out things from like the ski study or other studies that have been conducted by U.S. scientists or doctors or medical professionals that were in our harm, or just not having access to materials and services to even be turned on to stuff like that. So I think that was my long answer to say I'm just here to provide the information, to give the information so people can discern for themselves how would you, when and if you are presented with research, how will you move forward? And also, let's start to have this conversation in the house. You know, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, Easter, those are big holidays for Black people. And we're talking about a lot of stuff. And I'm so glad that we're finally talking to each other about like healthcare, like going to the doctor and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to expanding that out into what that looks like in terms of like research participation, feeling comfortable, feeling confident. Because when you're a minority in this country, like you said, you have to feel confident to blaze your own trail, like you said, to do your thing, to do your thing. And to feel comfortable in that, even though you don't have a PhD or you're not familiar with it, you have to come off with that confidence. And so for Black Research Matters, that's the space that I want to have for people, Black people, to feel confident to ask the questions that they need to ask. Let's talk about biorepository. Okay, let's talk about what that term means. Let's talk about what it means to keep your data indefinitely. What does that look like? Where is it at? If you don't want to be in the trial anymore, who do you contact? What does that really mean? What does it really mean when they tell you, you can take this home, this consent, you can take this home and you can talk about that? Understanding and doubling down triple times over that participants at any time can tap out. Like at any time you don't want to do this and you don't like being here and you don't like the question that they ask, you can say, I want to leave right now. You do not have to stay. You know, these essential things that people need to know and understand and hear when it comes to participating in research, primarily because of what has been done to us historically in the past.
Yeah, being very subservient. I know that for Latinos, it's a lot of it is like, respect, so you stay quiet and you listen
Right.
and yeah, just insane. But I one of the things that you just mentioned about your organization that I love is that you're here to just provide the resources, and that's really what the basis of LICR is as well. We want to provide and give. Like that's really all we're doing is just
Yeah.
giving. We're not, taking or anything like that. It's for the sake of understanding that where we all came from, and like that me, Judy, and Monica are Latina, Dan is Romanian, and Chris is Caucasian. We and our ambassadors, we're bringing on more. We want have a large, wide variety of representation. Latinos in clinical research, we are focused primarily, excuse me, primarily, sorry, on Latinos because of the language barrier, right? And there was nothing there, and even that goes even further than that because there's many language barriers that are obviously all over, right? When it comes to research, but we are open to all ethnicities, and we do have a lot of Afro Latinos as well as some African
Mm-hmm.
Americans in our group, and I think it would be very great to be able to, at some times, if you are open, to having, open dialogue conversation, right? Because we are two different, culture backgrounds, right? And how the perspective comes together. So I think that that would actually be really great. So our members can also, cross over as well to your organization because it may be just
Yeah.
as helpful, if not more. So
Yeah. A lot of shared experiences here for sure. A
yeah,
lot of them.
100%. And so we really appreciate what you're doing. I really love, what the foundation of your organization is based on because really,
Thank you.
yeah, because, ultimately we can ascend as high as we want, right? Because of the connections we have and the experience we have. But we don't want to do that. What do they call the crab in the bucket effect, right? We want to make sure we're going
Hmm.
back and pulling somebody out as opposed to allowing them to get pulled back in. And so in order to do that, we really have to be there for our community and shed light on what's out there because it's the only way to bring more people in, right? So I really appreciate you sharing everything about your organization.
Yeah, and
Thank you. Thank you.
before we go, like 10 minutes extended session on our Latinos and Clinical Research channel, Brittany, just for Guru Nation in general. As a generalist, somebody watching right now saying, "Wow, this I'm so glad like I'm on this channel and let me get some advice from Brittany on how do I enter clinical research? Like I have no experience, maybe my confidence is not very high, like you were saying. So what are some things they can do right now to improve their chances?"
Yeah, I am I think that that's always to this person. That is always the evolution of a person in clinical research is always the case. So fear not. I and others like me who are out here looking for a position who have been in the field for 15, 16 years, you still have to mold yourself with the times. So what the ask is even without somebody having experience in the field, look at the job description and figure out what skills you already have or you think you're good at, and highlighting those either in the cover letter or getting yourself prepared for the interview or just for self-confidence purposes. Sometimes I look at job descriptions and maybe I don't apply, but like in my mind I'm practicing what that would look like. They want something that's just outside of my realm. They want a 15-year PhD. I'm like, well, I mean, no, but like I'm analytical and I can disseminate. Like I'm trying to think of things and I'm a far shot. No, don't hire me for that, but getting in the practice of always highlighting and embracing your abilities.
Hmm.
And that'll make you feel more comfortable in these interview spaces as somebody who hates fears interviews and public speaking and stuff like that. It gets you more comfortable and familiar with like who you are and selling that. I hate interviews because they get in there and they're like, so tell me about yourself quickly. And you have to
Quickly.
say the greatest stuff about yourself as fast as possible so you can get this job. And we don't need money. So I think it's for somebody getting into the field. I think fear not, because even though those of us who are in the field, it may look as if we're going about things just fine, but I think all of us know when it comes time to look for a new position, you have to zhuzh up your resume. You have to change the wording depending on the company or the academic institution. Some things have to go and some things have to change, and it's just that, like reevaluating your resume, using different words. Google is so great right now for that, because I just updated my CV and using a thesaurus, changing certain words that HR systems are going to catch quicker than you using coordinated. Maybe you navigated, you know what I mean? So those things matter, and I think as people play around with their CVs and their resumes, you feel more confident in your work because you actually have this place where you can display all of that, and you just highlighted yourself. And now look at you, like, an hour or two later, now you're a clinical research professional on paper, or now you can present that way, or now you can begin to feel confident in that space because you've taken these office management skills and found a way to bring them into research admin. You know what I mean? Like having the ability to, I guess, filing and general organization that can be useful in TMF.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think if one wants to get into the field, and you're new, or it's a crossover experience where you're coming from somewhere else, you'll have to be very patient with yourself. Dan, you and I talked about this yesterday, how difficult it is to get into the field, first of all. And and so there's that. So bravo for somebody for wanting to get in. So be patient and keep looking over your resume and getting comfortable with what it feels like to explain who you are and explain how you're going to be valuable to the organization.
And now, and you
Uh,
sound exactly like the advice from Ashley Margot, but now we can add networking, right?
we
Black
go
Research Matters,
networking.
Latinos in clinical research.
Absolutely.
And we will send over, I mean, we at the academy, we come across many students that, are looking for organizations, and even more so because they're already going through their own financial struggle, right? Because we've all been there. So I will definitely, as I get my clients and my students, I will definitely be sending them over to you, as I know that you guys are free, and it's going to be a great opportunity. So I'm very happy that came across you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
me
so much.
too. And
Same.
Brittany, thank you so much. Stay on, both of you guys, 10 more minutes. We'll do extended for Latinos in Clinical Research YouTube channel. If you're watching on my channel, just go to Latinos in Clinical Research, watch the 10 minutes. We're going to go a little more in depth inside baseball of the two organizations, similarities, shared values, things like that. But Brittany, thank you so much for coming on. Brittany's LinkedIn is underneath this video. And if you're listening, all right, in the show notes, same with Ashley Margot right here. Ashley. So links in the show notes. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and more content. Latinos in Clinical Research.